now.
Hi, so I'm Matthew Parry, Director of SME Graduate Employment, and I have been working with students and graduates in recruitment for the last 5 years. I've been in recruitment industry since 2005, and I also had a spell working for a university in a graduate employment role. So it's an area that I know quite well. Mainly worked with SMEs over the years. So I've got a good understanding of how they work and the application process, etc. And also dealing with a lot of applications daily. There's a lot coming through. So I get a good idea of the sort of caliber of applications that are coming through, maybe some of the faults that are happening. A lot of them are easily solved. So I've got a few hints and tips about how to approach the applications. I think a lot of them would apply to the bigger businesses as well. So not necessarily just the smaller businesses, but in general. So it is tough out there at the moment. It has been for the last few years, especially since there's more people with degrees. There's a lot of competition, and especially at the moment for obvious reasons. As an example, a couple of positions I've worked on recently. One was a graduate marketing role in Leicester, where there was over 300 applications for one position. And a graduate role that I've been working on this week for a chemical engineer. Part of the criteria for that role was they needed somebody with a sandwich placement. Sandwich placement graduates are always in demand. It's a fantastic piece of experience. But even then, there was over 120 applicants who actually had the sandwich placement and were recent graduates. So it's more important than ever to stand out. Additional bits of experience, anything can add to it. I think what House Hack is a fantastic thing to have on the CV, a bit of something tangible to add on. And any kind of relevant work experience as well at the moment is particularly standing out. I also like to see more general work experience as well alongside that, things like retail, etc. But I'll go on to that shortly. Firstly, a bit about the small to medium sized businesses and why graduates and students as well should be considering these businesses. The strict terminology would say that the SMEs are usually up to 250 employees. I use it a bit looser because I think it's more about the fact that a lot of these businesses have got fantastic opportunities, but they're maybe not as readily accessible as the bigger employers, the Times Top 100, for example, who get a lot of attention, quite high profile within the universities, and the smaller businesses can often find it a bit tougher to get their opportunities out there. So this is where I come in. I build the links with the businesses and then look to find the right students and graduates for them. I work across sandwich placements, student summer internships, graduate internships and permanent roles. And across most business sectors, there's many positions that are filled over the years, including some that were unique to specific businesses. So with the SMEs in the UK, there's actually over 99% of the businesses in the UK that are small to medium in size. So it's a huge amount. And that's about 60% of all private sector jobs. Not all of them have traditionally worked with graduates, but again, that's something that I discuss with them about the merits of taking on graduates or perhaps a student for a summer internship. And there's a lot more businesses now that are having the opportunity for graduates. The benefits are that it's a flatter structure. Most of the people in the business will know you. The directors, for example, will know who you are. You can work on and sometimes take charge of a range of projects. There's a more varied role usually where you can add your skills and duties as the job progresses. Learning on the job, getting stuck in from day one. You'd probably be only one of a few graduates, maybe even one graduate. And therefore, there's a lot more that you can achieve There's more opportunities in different areas as well, not just the big cities. And you can contribute and innovate more in businesses with less employees. In terms of the application and interview process, it can be a lot more straightforward as well. There's not usually the psychometric assessments or assessment days, that sort of thing, which is not always advantageous for everyone. Some people have missed out on some of the graduate schemes, for instance, because of that process. Whereas with the SMEs, certainly the positions that I work on, it's usually more straightforward. Again, I'll go into that in a bit more depth. Usually it's not a formal scheme, and it's as and when they need someone. So it could be any time of year that they will be recruiting. So not at the traditional September, for example. And very often there's graduates have started in a business and worked their way up to director level within a fairly short period. This, for example, a couple of graduates I placed 5 years ago have now recruited for their department. They came back to me and asked me to find someone for them. So that's always a good thing. Now, the opportunities that I have, they're generally one-offs, and there's a lot of competition for each of them. There's usually in the hundreds. And if you go onto my website, www.sme-graduates.co.uk, there's a section there where there's blogs and advice. So as an example, one of the ones that I've written recently is about how learning shouldn't finish once you've graduated. As time goes on, the degree can be less and less relevant. So for example, if someone had graduated 2-3 years ago and not done anything relevant since, it's very difficult because there are other graduates who will be coming afterwards who've got a more recent degree. And therefore it's important to keep looking at things, keep learning things. If it's, for example, a technological type degree, computing or IT, learning new skills, going online, doing courses, making sure you're keeping up to date with the new technologies. If it's a role that's more about doing, for example, marketing, this doing voluntary work, doing things with societies, hobbies, could be anything really, but ultimately it's about getting that experience and measuring it. So for example, if it's setting up social media, measuring the effect and getting that on the CV as well, a percentage increase, that type of thing, that can really stand out. And I know even graduates who have not studied marketing, but have actually been successful in applying for a marketing position because of that, because they had so much knowledge about social media, etc., and had actually got the evidence there that they'd done it. So that's definitely one of the key things, is keeping up to date with the skills. In terms of the CV, again, there's some guidance on the CV layout. I think I'm hearing a lot about people that's been advised to keep a CV to a single page, which I don't agree with. The 2 pages is fine. Anything more, it gets a bit much, but certainly 2 pages is not a problem. And also I have heard people have been advised to take certain jobs off their CV, but I would definitely argue against that. I think anything that you've done is valuable. There's a lot of skills that you will have learned: retail, waitressing, hospitality, anything of that nature. It's all good experience. And it also shows that you can hold down a job and work, which there can be sometimes, a lot of employers will ask me, how do they know that someone's going to be able to commit to a job if they've not got any experience? So I would say anything at all is good, and be proud of it. On the application as well, I think the key thing is to make it relevant to the job itself. The clues are there in the adverts. There'll be certain things that will be asked for, and there might be specific skills, it might be attributes that they're looking for, but I would always recommend tailoring each application towards each role. go through the job description. There's quite a detailed blog on it on the website, and it really is about standing out. Whoever is going to be looking at the CV and applications will be looking for certain things to be covered. There's so many times I've spoke with graduates and said that they've not been successful because they didn't have a particular bit of experience, and they did have it. For whatever reason, they've not written it on the CV. It does take time to update it, but it's certainly worth doing. I know at the moment a lot of graduates are applying for any position that they see, but that's counterproductive. I think a more focused and streamlined strategy is much better, showing that you are suitable for that particular role and that you're interested. I mentioned earlier that there's hundreds of applications for each position. Within that, there's probably only maybe 10% that really stand out. And they would be the ones who've actually covered the key criteria. Especially if it says that it's essential, then it really does need to be on there. I personally don't think a cover letter is the way to do it. I would rather have it as a summary on the CV, partly because I think cover letters, a lot of it's unnecessary, the bits that go into it, but also because I do know of examples where CVs have been printed off and the cover letter's not been printed off with it, and people have lost out as a result. So it's better to have it in there, focused, punchy, maybe 200 to 500 words maximum, but really focusing on the key bits, not putting in things that are not really essential. For example, a lot of people will put things about leadership, but if it's not asked for in the advert, then I wouldn't put that in. It's about making it really focused and standing out. There's also a blog on there about preparing for an interview. I can't stress enough the importance of doing some research and thinking about why you want the role, finding out about the business, and really being able to put across why you're interested. It will show if you've not done that preparation. And try and think of some of the questions that you might be asked. It could be examples of where you've done certain things that are in the job description. Other things to bear in mind, making sure that you're prepared. I had someone on an interview last week, and it was a Zoom interview. I don't know if he'd read the information that I sent him, but it turned out that the first 10 minutes of the interview was trying to adjust the phone so that the interviewer could see him. And he actually had a cup in front of the phone as well, which meant that the interviewer couldn't see him. So things like that, it's really need to think about it. There's a lot of ways to stand out as well. For example, there was a position that I filled last week where the business was looking for a particular type of software knowledge that is not readily available even for experienced people. It's not taught at university, but they did think that a certain profile would be able to adapt. I've got someone with that profile. There was still a bit wary in case he wouldn't be long-term interested, but he actually went to the trouble of downloading that software and starting to learn it before the interview. So he was actually able to say to them, look, I know this about it now. And just on that alone, I think that really made him stand out, and he got the position. So I think those are the key things. I've also put a bit in there about offers as well. If you are getting going for various interviews and getting sometimes more than one offer, it's a good position to be in, but it also can be a bit difficult to handle. So there's a blog on there as well about maybe how to approach that and what you need to do. The first thing is certainly to keep people up to date with what's happening. Just looking at the time list, I think that's the end of the time. So the website again is sme-graduates.co.uk, and there's a section there for students and graduates to look at. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. That was really good. I think that covered quite a lot of the key word I've heard there multiple times is like proactivity, like trying to go above and beyond everything you can and trying to do that. I've got two main questions that are kind of quite different. The first one being, from my experience of looking at CVs pretty often or looking at applications therein for startups, I often see the biggest thing I'm giving on the replies or feedback is add numbers to your CV and demonstrate your value through ROI and how much impact you've had.
Yeah.
But that can be particularly hard to know at the early stage where you've been involved, say, with society, or you've done X or Y in a project. How can you put a number on the intangibles? Like, I've made 15% improvement to the team performance or something. Like, how can you know that at an early stage in your career is the first kind of question. And the second one is, from my experience of like weighing them up when I was coming out of university and thinking between a graduate scheme versus going into an SME or startup. Yes, you get the freedom and the flexibility, but like you said, you're often one of the only ones in there as well. So I'm just wondering if you had any thoughts on kind of graduate isolation in SMEs versus being part of a cohort in kind of broader, bigger companies as well. So any advice on either of those two fronts?
Yeah, sure. Good question. So I'd say firstly, there's no substitute really for the percentage increases. It really stands out, but yeah, but people might not always be able to get that. But I think but the first thing I would do is try and get it. So if they don't know, then maybe ask someone who does, if there's any way that it's been measured, if there's anything at all that they can get. But also while they are doing it, if they're the person who's responsible for setting these up, then measure and take notes as they go along. I always think for internships, sandwich placements, for example, I always recommend that the student or graduate takes notes as they're going along, and then they can refer back to it afterwards, because there'd be so much to remember, and there's a lot that can be forgotten. So I'd say firstly, try and get that information, but if not, then I think certainly getting it across in some way that there has been an increase. You know, that's the key part, because a lot of times things might be set up but nothing's really happened as a result of it. So I think anything that can be done is a positive. In terms of the isolation, yeah, that's a good point. I think first, what relocation's a big thing at the moment. I'm getting a lot of applications from people who are applying for jobs in various areas, but it doesn't really work, especially for the smaller businesses. It works in a lot of instances, but I think overall there can be problems with it, where people maybe will get homesick. They'll want to go back to where the friendship base is. And certainly I know a lot of businesses are wary of that, because I know there has been instances where people have left. So I do think that if someone has relocated, the business needs to try and do what they can to make them feel welcomed, to involve them in things. There are situations where I think it's more likely than not that someone will need to relocate. As an example, a business that I'm working with at the moment in Suffolk that deal with a very specialist type of chemical work, where it's not taught locally, so people have to relocate. And also it's quite a fairly rural area, so it's not likely that there's going to be people who are from there who have been away to study it. And they're really quite big on helping people. They've got a support network there. They help people to relocate, and things like team lunches, bonding sessions, etc. But I think it's important to keep people updated as well if there is a problem. I always try and keep in contact with the students and graduates that I place for a good few weeks afterwards, certainly, and just make sure that they're happy with everything, and if there is any problems, they can talk through it. But I think in a lot of it, the issues can come at the start. There's settling in periods, etc. But it's just things usually pick up after time.
Awesome, thank you. Yes, some good answers there as well. Helen, you got any questions?
I was going to ask, given that a lot of these placements in SMEs are not formal in their nature, how as a student do you go about finding them? Because it's stressful enough trying to find placements without trying to, sometimes you have to prospectively ask companies, but that can be quite a long process. So how do you recommend finding the placements in the SMEs?
Yeah, it can be a long process. I mean, I certainly have got contacts. It's just myself in the business. I offer a kind of bespoke service to the businesses that I work with. I work with many businesses, but they will recruit as and when, and they're in different parts of the country and different role types. So unfortunately, I'm not able to personally help everyone, but I certainly do what I can. But I always recommend as well that a good way of doing it is to look at where you're based and do a bit of research, get a list of companies together, and proactively contact them. You could find out from the company website who the people are, the decision makers, from LinkedIn, for example. And I don't think there's anything wrong with just sending them your CV through, a summary of what you're looking for, introducing yourself. Have you got anything at the moment? And that can certainly help. And even for graduate roles as well.
Okay, thank you. I've just got a quick second question.
Yeah, sure.
I was going to ask, you mentioned about how you prefer having a summary over having a cover letter.
Yeah.
If they do ask specifically for a cover letter, would you in that instance not include the summary on a CV, or would you still include the summary on the CV?
I think the summary is my personal preference. There's various reasons for that. I think if they've specifically said a cover letter, I would certainly go with what they've asked. Essentially, it's the same thing, but it's just, I think the summary is more punchy and focused and to the point. And as I say, a large part of the reason I personally prefer it is because I know of situations where cover letters haven't been printed off, especially if more than one person's involved in it. But I'm sure if they've mentioned a cover letter specifically, they will be looking out for it as well. So they would make sure that they had it.
Okay, thank you.
No, but I think overall the key thing is just making sure it's focused as well, because even with cover letters, I've had people copy and paste them and send me the same one that they've had for however many jobs, sometimes even mentioning the name of the business where they'd applied to previously because they hadn't taken it off. So I think that's the key thing, is although it takes a bit of time, it really the percentage chance of the percentage that increases your chances is huge, because it really does stand out. That you just take that bit of time and think, this is what the employer wants. This is what this is why I'm a good match.
Yeah, definitely have vouch for that as well. Ben, got any questions?
No. I think a lot of the questions I had have been asked already. But yeah, I just want to say that I really enjoyed the presentation, and it was definitely insightful for me.
Good, thank you.
Awesome. And then Ryan, any questions?
My thought would be around how you mentioned a lot of grads, a lot of students, young people leave experiences off their CVs, maybe omit it from their maybe LinkedIn profile as well. It's something that I've seen a lot of professionals reflect on once they're in roles, to say, actually, I wish I didn't do that. So my question would be, how can we maybe change the narrative, or how can we communicate better with graduates that actually, your cafe job, your retail job, your Etsy shop that you're doing from your bedroom, and whatever that thing is that they're not sure about, they're maybe ashamed of, they're not sure there's transferable skills. How can we get people to make sure they put everything on their CVs and then tailor the skills from those experiences to the jobs, not change the experiences themselves?
Yeah, well, I've written a blog about it as well, actually. I think it's I always feel a bit sad when I hear it, that there was someone who'd worked at a very well-known fast food restaurant that I know is very hard work, and someone had said to them, don't put that on your CV, which I thought, why wouldn't you do it? I think that's the key thing. People maybe look back and think they wish they hadn't put it on, but they may not have actually got the job in the first place if they hadn't have added it on. I think it gives such a, the key thing is, there's so many things that they can draw on. They can answer the competency-based questions. Myself, I actually used to manage a betting shop years ago, and I employed graduates to work for me, and the growth that they showed in stature when they came in, and then when they left, the confidence that they developed, it was just incredible. But I always say to people, be proud of what you've done. It's a difficult job. I think if an employer would look down on someone who'd worked in retail, for example, I'm not sure I would want to personally work for them anyway. because it's something to be proud of. So yeah, I think that's the key thing is just making that sure. It also builds up a better picture. Again, I've had examples of where people had finished a degree maybe a year before, and they'd been working in retail again, for example, or some of the people that are working at the moment in the COVID related work. And again, they hadn't left it on, so it just looked that there was a gap. At the moment, that's a bit more excusable than normal years. But I think, when things are back to normal, a big gap after after graduating, it certainly doesn't look as good as having worked in a shop or a restaurant, whatever it may be. It shows that they've been doing some kind of work and holding down a position. Maybe it's not what they want to be doing long term, but it's still something worthy of respect.
Yeah, definitely. It fills those gaps and makes sense, doesn't it? More anything else, it tells a story as well. And just quickly on to Ben, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, just speaking about gaps, would you say that employment gaps are somewhat excusable for students? Because some students might feel like they just want to focus on getting their degree or something and not get distracted by having kind of a part-time job. So what would you say on that?
It's a difficult one, but I would say overall, again, if there's so many, it's all relative to what everybody's done. I personally would rather see, this is my opinion, but also I know a lot of employers that I work with, I'd rather see a 2-1 with work experience than a first with no work experience. I would say it as strongly as that. A lot of the people who have been concentrating on the studies have come out with a 2-1 or even a first and been doing the part-time job. So I think if there was someone who'd done that and they were able to say, this shows my time management, this shows that I've done, I've been able to do both of these things successfully, and there was someone against them who hadn't done that, the employer, I think, would lean towards the person who'd done it more times than not. So I would always recommend it, definitely. I mean, some people may not be able to do it because they've got other responsibilities. There might be a reason why they weren't able to do work alongside the studies. But I'd say if there's no reason why you can't, then I would certainly do it. And often I've asked people, did you not, have you not done any work at all while you were studying? They said they didn't need to because I had money, which is all very well, but again, when it comes down to it, and when they're applying for jobs, the blank CV with just the degree on it against someone who's had that other bit of experience, it's a bit of a disadvantage.
Yeah, that's understandable. Thank you.
Thanks.
Awesome. Yeah, some great takeaways there. I think especially on a 2-1 with experience is more applicable than a first without experience. So definitely a big takeaway there. So yeah, thank you,
so. I think there might be some occasions in certain industries where the opposite would be true. I would say, broadly speaking, overall, and certainly the employers that I work with would rather that.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think I've heard it quite a few times that the degree is almost the least important part of your time at uni, and it's everything else you do around it that's important. So yeah, can definitely hear that as well. But yeah, thank you, Matthew. Really appreciate that. Some great thoughts throughout, and I'll just end the recording there.